Now, what's Calvy's first name? My first name.
Kingston, Arizona, blue warm wind through your hair. My body flies the galaxies, my heart longs to be there.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Flicks Files. It's science fiction time again, my favourite time, yay! And I'm going to talk about a science fiction movie that I first saw in 1983. Back in my secondary school days, we had a teacher that ran a movie club, and once a week he would charge like 20 pence a ticket, and you could stay back after school and gather in a classroom, and he would wheel out the television and video on one of those wheel stands that they used to have, if anyone remembers those, and put a movie on. And it was great, you know, watching a movie with a group of people of the same age, and if it was a movie you hadn't seen, that was even better. And that was where I first saw Dark Star, and it had a very lasting impression on me. And it wasn't until a good while later that I learned that one of the actors in this movie was Dan Bannon, who, of course, was the creative mind behind Alien, which is my favorite movie of all time. So I was delighted when I eventually learned that and got to understand a bit more about who Dan Bannon was. So this was a movie that Dan O'Bannon thought of doing when he was in film school back in 1970. And at that time, he was very good friends with another student who just happened to be called John Carpenter. And of course, John Carpenter went on to become a very famous director in his own right and made a good catalogue of films throughout his career. Most of which I have behind me. And he's a director that I'll definitely be talking a lot more about in the future. So the two of them got together with some close friends and decided they were going to have a stab at making a low-budget science fiction movie as a film school project. And this they did. And at the end of 1972, they'd made a 68-minute movie, which was then seen by a film producer called Jack B. Harris, I think his name is. And he liked it so much that he offered them more money to film additional scenes so they could turn it into a feature-length picture, which he could then release theatrically. So that happened in 1974. So that's the version of the movie that I'm going to talk about. I have this on DVD. There's a DVD version of it available called the Hyperdrive edition, and it has both versions of the movie. So it has the extended theatrical version, which is the version I know best, but it also has the original 68-minute version. So if you're interested in owning this movie, I would say get the DVD over the Blu-ray, because the Blu-ray only contains the theatrical version. And there's also some great extras on the DVD as well. It's on like 2 discs. So what's this movie about? Why do I love it so much? Well, I like its cheapness for one. I mean, when I first saw it back as a teenager, I could see straight away that it was a low-budget movie, but I didn't know at that time it was a student film. So that just impressed me even more when I found that out. But it's just impressive to see what they did with the money that they had. You know, the visual effects in it are, for the early 1970s, were pretty good, you know, and there was quite a lot of early talent there in this movie that obviously blossomed as the years went on. So the movie is about 4 astronauts on a spaceship called Dark Star, and their mission is to find unstable planets and destroy them with these thermonuclear devices that they carry. They effectively have these bombs that have some sort of AI that they can converse with, so they can speak to them like a normal person. So they can arm themselves, and then they'll drop one of these bombs onto the atmosphere of an unstable planet and destroy it. And I don't think the movie ever explains why they do this. I think it's just to create like safe passageways for space travel or something like that. But at the beginning of the movie, it's clear that they've been doing this for some time and they're just completely bored out of their minds. And, that's one of the things I like about this film, because it's something that they don't really cover that much in science fiction movies, in that if you have a small group of people on a spaceship and they're traveling vast distances, and it's the time involved in that, and just the complete boredom that's bound to set in where you're with the same people for an extended length of time and you kind of run out of things to talk about and things to do. So the four characters, Pinback, who is played by Dan O'Bannon, and he's kind of the joker of the crew. He's the only one that tries to keep the atmosphere light, and find ways of trying to brighten things up a bit. He tries to unsuccessfully play various jokes on the crew. And he tries to strike up conversations when they're eating lunch, but he always gets beaten down because, the other crew members are just completely at their wits' end, really. And then we have Boiler, and he's kind of the masculine one of the crew. He likes to spend time shooting like a laser weapon at a makeshift target that he sets up on a piece of iron plating. And, he's always smoking, and he carries like a flick knife that he plays around with when he's bored. And then we have Talby, and we don't really see very much of Talby. He seems to spend most of his time sat up in like the observation deck of the ship, which is like a glass dome. And he sits up there just staring at the stars. And occasionally one of the crew members goes up to speak to him. And then the final crew member is Doolittle. And Doolittle was like a surfer when he was on Earth. So he's missing surfing. And he's kind of the makeshift captain because their previous captain, Captain Powell, died when his seat malfunctioned, apparently. So in the movie, we only ever see Powell in like a cryogenic state. He's like frozen and stored down in the hold. And they can still communicate with him through a machine that provides like a synthesized voice.
It's been so long since anyone has come to talk with me.
Commander, sir, we have a big problem.
So it's as if they're communicating with his consciousness. And occasionally they go down there to speak to him to try and get advice and things. So, yeah, the movie kind of plays out where they're trying to stave off boredom. And what happens is the computer tells them that the ship is going to fly through an electrical storm. So they make a beeline for the control deck to try and lock the ship down in readiness. And they fly through this storm, and part of the electrical storm damages a circuit which affects the bomb bay. So as a result of this, one of the bombs loads itself at the bottom of the ship and begins to arm itself. So they have to quickly communicate with the bomb and say, no, there's been an error. That we don't need you to detonate. You need to return to the bay immediately. So the bomb light says, oh, okay, no problem, and, disarms and disappears back into the bay. And they kind of forget all about it. And then we get to a point in the movie that starts to turn into one of my favorite scenes in the movie, where we learn that they have an alien on board. I don't think they ever explain how they got this damn alien, but sure enough, it's there. And it's Pinback's job to look after it because he was the one that wanted them to keep it on board the ship. So he has to go down and kind of sweep the pen out where they keep it and feed it cabbages that it doesn't really like. And the design of the alien is lovely. It's basically like a painted beach ball with two like little clawed feet. And it just makes like squeaky noises and just tends to bounce up and down on, when it's sat.
When I brought you on the ship, I thought you were cute.
And it's really cute for such a stupid thing. I mean, it's a crazy idea, a beach ball. So there's this like protracted scene that's just brilliant. And this was one of the extended scenes they filmed for the theatrical version, where he goes to feed this bloody beach ball, and the beach ball escapes from the pen. I think it like crawls through an air duct, as I remember. So Pinback has to go after it. And he ends up chasing it into an elevator shaft. And just as he reaches the elevator shaft, the beach balls manage to get a plank and place it across the shaft so it can, walk over the shaft to another air duct. And as Pinback reaches it, the beach ball's moving this bloody plank out of the way, so Pinback, can't get to him. But Pinback doesn't get up. He doesn't give up this easily, and he decides that he's going to kind of lower himself down into this elevator shaft, and crawl along the walls of the shaft to get to the other side. And it's there that the elevator activates. So the elevator's coming down the shaft while he's hanging in the shaft. Now, I remember being fascinated by this sequence when I saw it as a teenager. And I swear I didn't work out how they filmed it. I just took it for what it was, and that he was hanging in this elevator shaft, and it looked really dangerous. And, you watch it now with like wizened old eyes, and you can see that the elevator shaft is actually just on its side. So when it looks like he's hanging from the shaft, he's just laying on his stomach. And it spoils the magic of it a little bit, but it's still incredibly well done. And the scene plays out where he ends up hanging at the bottom of his lift to stop himself getting crushed. And the lift is going up and down the shaft, and he's obviously thinking, well, I can't be here all day. So he unscrews these bolts on like a little plate on the underside of the elevator and squeezes himself through to get inside. But he ends up getting stuck once he gets to his waist. So he's kind of half and half, and his legs are hanging at the bottom of this elevator. And he sees that there's like a plate release mechanism on the controls of his lift. And he arms it, and he realizes it's like explosive bolts on each corner of this plate. And so he arms it, and then he suddenly gets this realization of, oh God, I'm right in the middle of it. I can't get out of the way of the explosion. And there's this bang, and then the next shot is we see him walk out of this smoke, and he's still got this bloody plate around his waist. It's really funny. And so out of sheer anger, he gets like this tranquilizer pistol, I think it is, and goes back to the beach ball and just fires a dart at it. Obviously punctures it, and it just deflates like a balloon, which is really sad because it was such a cute thing. But again, really funny, just very clever inventiveness. And I think it was the basis of that encouraged him when he wrote Alien, that he wanted to make an alien that was, a lot more realistic, because he always felt guilty that his first alien was just a painted beach ball. So what he didn't see is, just before he captures the beach ball, is that it manages to get into the computer room, and it's fiddling about with the wiring where the electrical storm had damaged it earlier in the movie. So as a result of this, it makes the bomb lower itself a second time. So once again, they have to converse with the bomb and say, no, it's a false alarm. You have to go back inside. And this time the bomb sort of just goes, oh, okay, but this is the last time, when it goes back into the ship.
Oh, all right. But this is the last time.
So what happens as we get towards the end of the movie is that they get to a planet that they have to destroy. So they go through the regular routine that they've done dozens of times before, and they're just doing it kind of without really thinking about it. And they lower the bomb, and they get the bomb to arm itself. But then what happens? They do the countdown to release the bomb, to drop it into the planet's atmosphere. And when they get to that point, they, 3, 2, 1, drop. And it doesn't drop. It just sits there.
4, 3, 2, 1, drop. Negative drop.
So you can see them thinking, oh, well, we'll try again. 3, 2, 1, drop. And it won't drop. And this bloody bomb sat there, and it's already armed itself.
3, 2, 1, Drop. Drop.
So they all start panicking, and he's sort of saying to the bomb, "Look, you know, we've got a problem. You've got to disarm." And of course, by this time, the bomb's thinking, "Well, this is the third time they've told me to do this." So it's taking a more work shy stance of, "No, I'm going to fulfill my requirements and explode," you know. And you're thinking, "Oh God, what are we going to do?" And so I think Talby is already in a spacesuit. And he's in the computer room, which is like depressurized. And then Doolittle puts on another spacesuit and he goes outside the ship to try and talk to the bomb. And he has this like conversation with the bomb and tries to, you know, I think the word he uses is he tries to teach it phenomenology, he calls it. And I think he's trying to say to it that, you know, if you explode, then you'll no longer exist. So wouldn't you rather just stay existing? And you think he's winning it over and he's trying to talk the bomb into disarming itself. But at the last second, so spoilers, it does. It explodes.
Hey, bomb?
Let there be light.
And so it kills Pinback and Boiler, who were still on the ship. And Talby and Doolittle are in spacesuits and they get thrown in opposite directions away from the explosion. And I believe I've read recently that the ending of this movie was based on a Ray Bradbury short story, I think, called Kaleidoscope, which was a similar ending where the ship explodes and two astronauts get thrown away in separate directions into deep space. So the ending of the movie are these two survivors of Dark Star are just drifting away from one another. And they can still communicate, you know, while the signal's strong enough for them to communicate. And earlier in the movie, Talby, when he's sat in his observation deck, Doolittle goes to see him for a chat. And Talby tells him about something called the Phoenix asteroids and how they like roam the galaxy every so many thousand years, and they just drift around and they're meant to, you know, shimmer like diamonds. And he's like saying, "Oh, you know, it'd be a fascinating thing to see." Well, at the end of the movie, Talby's drifting off in this direction and he sees the Phoenix asteroids in the distance. And he realizes that he's going to intercept them, that he's heading towards them with the direction that he's moving. So his kind of final moments are he joins the Phoenix asteroids to sort of roam the galaxy forever. You know, and there's a certain amount of little poetic beauty about that for some cheapo little student movie. Meanwhile, Doolittle, he manages to grab a piece of debris from the wreckage of the Dark Star. And of course, he's a frustrated surfer. So he realizes that he's drifting towards the planet that they were trying to destroy. So in his final moments, he gets on board. He climbs on top of this piece of wreckage and rides it like a surfboard and kind of just surfs the atmosphere of this planet. And, you know, I think the final shot of the movie is we see him just, you know, burn up in the atmosphere as he drifts away from us. And yeah, and that's the ending. So the ending of the movie is that all the crew die. So there we go. That's a comedy film for you. But it is a lovely, lovely science fiction movie. And it was done on a budget. But I just love it for that very reason. You know, the cheapness of it. The fact that the controls on the ship, some of them are just ice cube trays that have been turned upside down and had a light put underneath them to look like buttons, you know, and how the front of the spacesuit, the design of the front of the spacesuit is just a muffin tray that you can bake muffins in that's been spray painted. And when you start to learn those things and, you know, the things that they did to try and make this science fiction movie as students, it just makes me love it even more. I mean, of all the genres to tackle, you know, they could have done like a drama with two people sat in a room and all they need is, you know, some lighting, a table and two chairs. But they wanted to do a science fiction movie. and all the complications, had to build all the sets. And as I say, the visual effects in this film are, you know, are pretty good for the time it was made and the budget that they had. And it's no surprise that Dan O'Bannon, you know, the early part of his career before he became a screenwriter, he did special effects, and he worked on things like Star Wars. You know, he did the computer displays in Star Wars. And yeah, it's just fascinating to see the very early work of Dan O'Bannon and John Carpenter. And as I say, I'm a big fan of John Carpenter, and I'll definitely be talking about his other movies on this channel. So that's Dark Star. So if watching this video has made you want to see this movie, then see if you can get the hyperdrive version and, you know, the DVD rather than the Blu-ray, and give it a go. If you like Alien and, you know, when you're a big sci-fi fan, you're going to love it. There's no way you're not going to like this movie. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you on the next one.